So each of these 7 stages describes a progressive shift in our mindset capacity. In other words, our capacity to perceive and respond in complex situations. So the way we grow through these stages is by inhabiting and doing the work of each stage. And that in turn builds our capacity to be available for what's next. So consider the way you learned how to drive a car. Right, with practice, you'd be able to read the road and manage the vehicle to the point where you could listen to music, you can listen to a podcast, you can talk on the phone, hands-free, of course, and maybe even think deep thoughts while you're driving because you had the experience of building the capacity to be able to drive. As our skills, awareness, and confidence increases, we have more available to try to learn and take on elements of the next mindset. So that's how we move through these stages. But even though it's called vertical, the goal is not to try to get to the higher, as we say, later stage. The best way to use this mindset stage framework is as a guide for your own learning journey. So use it as a map, not a measure. We all visit these different mindsets at different times in different ways. So understanding these mindsets can help you understand how to adapt your mindset to the situation at hand, as well as what might be the next development opportunity for you. Each mindset, of course, has its strengths and its challenges, and of course, the developmental work. And what we're going to be, as we go through these stages, you'll hear what those strengths and those weaknesses are and what some of the work is that shows up with each mindset. It's also helpful to acknowledge that mindset, what we're talking about when we say mindset, actually goes deep to challenge and explore deep, long-held beliefs, assumptions, identity, ways of operating, ways of relating. And so by exploring your mindset or perhaps challenging it can be somewhat difficult. It's not something that happens automatically, and that's why it requires experience and practice to do this work. It's not easy to shift mindset. And at the same time, the potential for growth and transformation is great. As we like to say, it's important to hold stage lightly and take your growth in context seriously. It's not as important what stage you come out as much as what does this tell you about how you're making sense of things and what's possible. So let's go through the different mindsets. So the first one we're going to talk about here, so the opportunist mindset is focused on immediate needs for self-protection. The opportunist mindset is focused on protecting oneself no matter what. The opportunist mindset sees threat very easily. That's one of its strengths. The problem with the opportunist mindset is that it tends to see a threat everywhere. And when you operate from a place of seeing threat everywhere, you're operating from, or perhaps maybe consumed by a felt need to protect and defend yourself. So this mindset can be caught up in manipulating, highly controlling the environment, highly controlling others to make sure they come out on top. And as I said, although this isn't a great way to be operating all the time, can be a really important way to operate when you're actually under real and immediate threat. And what usually happens with this mindset is at some point you realize there might be more security and safety in numbers and being part of the group than being out there on your own, trying to protect and defend all the time. And that moves us into the diplomat framework. Although it's helpful to note that we actually don't see too many people who are operating purely from the opportunist mindset in the workplace. So moving into the diplomat mindset, the diplomat mindset relies on clear norms, rules, group expectations. The group mindset is focused on belonging. What's most important from the group mindset is that I fit in. So you hear a lot about not going to rock the boat. Let's do things. We've always done things this way. Let's keep doing them this way. Or the diplomat mindset finds safety in the group. And honestly, in some cultures, self definition is being part of the group. So there's no good or bad here, except for when the diplomat mindset begins to limit a desire for individuality or perhaps a need to break away from the group to identify different, more improved ways of operating. And what happens with the diplomat mindset at some point, there's a desire or a need to develop an area of expertise, develop your own capabilities that are separate from the group. And that moves us into the expert mindset. The expert mindset is focused on what we know and what we do. The emphasis here is competence. The emphasis here is skill. And because of that, there's a high regard for details, a high regard for technical and logical means of measuring and tracking because we're trying to track how we're doing, how competent we are. There's a focus on credentials, there's a focus on standards. So, with the expert mindset, we're really focused on self and standing out through what we know and what we do and that sense of competence. And what often happens with the expert mindset is we get really good at what we know and what we do. And someone says, well, you're really good at what you know and what you do. You should be running the team, or better yet, the department. So before you know it, you're in charge of folks and you get in there and you do what you think you've been hired to do, which is tell them what to do because you know the right way to do things. And you quickly find that telling people how to do things or the right way to do them isn't the way to get them on board, and isn't the way to build a team, and isn't necessarily the way to get people to do what needs to get done. This is where the question comes in: what matters more, being right or being effective? And many people who are really in the expert mindset might say, well, I thought being right and being effective were the same thing. Only to discover that to be effective, I need to bring others along. I need to be able to work through others. Otherwise, I'm going to be doing their work for them. So, to be effective, I need to learn how to set goals, how to communicate those goals, how to work with others. So, how do they work with the expert mindset? Moving into the achiever mindset, which is the next mindset that we grow into, is around emotional and social intelligence, where we're learning how to communicate effectively, how to tune in, how to pay attention to what's actually being effective. So we're moving into the achiever mindset. Achiever mindset is an expansion on the expert mindset because it's not just about being right and being smart and being credentialed. It's now also about being effective, about being clear about what needs to get done, about delegating. So the achiever mindset is one of high energy, high agency. It's often the mindset that most of our organizations are operating at already because we need to deliver results. So with the achiever mindset, the emphasis is on how do I set goals? How do I build the capacity, the capabilities to achieve those goals? With this mindset, the work is often around how do I communicate? How do I have conversations that drive effectiveness, that build teams, that communicate goals in ways that people know how to get them done? This is also a mindset in which we take on an awful lot of responsibility because we can, because it feels good to be the one that people go to. And what often happens in the achiever mindset is that we get to a point where we are taking on an awful lot of responsibility and we forget to offload other responsibilities. Or what might happen is that that sense of gratification and satisfaction that comes from achieving goals isn't the same. We don't get the same sense of being jazzed by that sense of achievement anymore. And because of that, we do more of what we know how to do, which is do things, achieve things, knock things off our list. So we take on another project and we take on another project because we're trying to get that sense of excitement that we used to get from achieving goals. And this is where we might come up against this edge of what matters more, achievement or fulfillment. So, what happens at the other side of the achiever mindset is deeper questioning. But what am I actually up to? What is it that matters to me? And this brings us to the redefining mindset. The redefining mindset, just like the name implies, is about casting ourselves anew and our situations in new light. So, whereas up till now, our sense of self, identity, who we are in this world may have been defined by the group or by our credentials or standards or by our achievements and what we do. Now, our sense of who we are in this world is much more murky. It's much more unclear. It brings us into a mindset that's more about questioning. Who am I? What do I care about? What matters? And what are the ways these different systems that I'm part of are interconnected? This is a mindset in which the scaffolding that we use to rest our sense of self on becomes rickety. It doesn't hold up the same way, and we begin to explore what else is possible. So, this is a mindset. The work in this mindset is one of exploration, it's one of being in the question, it's one of exploring competing tensions like both and or polarities, and learning to hold those tensions without having to come up with a simple, clear solution. And leadership, this often looks like the taking more time to explore different perspectives, taking more time to be inclusive, taking more time to focus on people processes as well as getting stuff done. And what happens I think what's important to note here is that this mindset can actually be a very disruptive one to grow through. It often helps to have support. And what happens when we move through this mindset, as we become more aware of what's going on inside of us and what's going on with others and what's going on with the systems around us, we also develop more empathy. Our ability to see and understand and be with others and ourselves grows. We become less reactive, more responsive. And the other side of redefining brings us to this mindset of transforming. And the transforming mindset is one where we're almost like we're coming home, but with some distance, with altitude. We think of it as being going to the balcony and being able to look and see how things are interconnected. And with some distance, we can see it. So we don't get quite as spun up. We don't get as grabbed by what's going on. We're able to see, well, I don't necessarily have the answer to that, and it's okay because it's going to emerge. Let's create the conditions right now so we can move where we need to and and pay attention to what we need to pay attention to. It's a mindset where we become better at explaining what we see with some altitude from the balcony so others can get it. The transforming mindset is also one that shows itself in a increased capacity for compassion and also clarity. How do I communicate with clarity in a way people get it and compassionately? That demonstrates, that lets people know that I kind of get where they're coming from because I've been there. It's important to note that also the transforming mindset can come across as somewhat aloof or maybe arrogant because they do have this distance. And so, for that reason, often the work is, how do I tune into others so they can hear what I have to say and what I can contribute? Leadership from this mindset is often behind the scenes, supporting others, making connections behind the scenes, sort of like servant leadership. enabling the growth of others. Now, as we gain our understanding of systems and how systems are interconnected with other systems, we become we enter into the alchemical mindset. And the alchemical mindset is one that is tuned in to the emergence. It's tuned into the idea that everything, just about everything, is illusion. And we don't always need to act to make things happen. The work here, uh, my people who are operating from the alchemical mindset often find it hard to be within in organizations because conventional ways of operating are just too constraining for them. They tend to gravitate towards seeing things from a more existential point of view or perhaps spiritual point of view. They're willing to give things time and space and sit in silence, which can be very uncomfortable for many people within organizations. Um, if they if they stay in a leadership role in an organization, they're probably going to be more quiet, operate from behind the scenes, operate through others, operate through systems. The alchemical mindset uh, also struggles. It struggles with loneliness. There aren't many people who see the world the way they do, so they might have a hard time connecting with others. They also struggle with a sense of, is this all there is? At the alchemical mindset, we're in this big question about, well, what is this all about? What's really important to remember with these stages is that we all have a center of gravity or mindset tendency that we tend to operate from most readily, comfortably, and skillfully. And understanding that mindset can also help us identify what the gifts are that we bring and what the limitations of that mindset might be, how that mindset might limit us. We also can visit mindsets. So we can inhabit a mindset or have it as a center of gravity, and we can visit a mindset. Try it on, see how it works, experiment, or we can lean back to an earlier mindset. And we're going to talk about that when we talk about range.